So I'm going to go over how to export this map without getting a bunch of funky lines on it. And what happens is this is a map with a raster in the background and vector layers that have transparency. And because PDFs can't show transparent vectors, what it has to do is it has to rasterize the vectors into the background raster. But it runs into a problem where when it does that, for some reason there's these seam lines that appear all across the image and they're very ugly. You don't see them here because I am in Arc Pro. So we're going to start here, and I'm going to have my nice finished map, and I'm going to export it. And so you'll go up to Share and press Layout, and Export Layout, and change the file type to AIX. That's for an Adobe Illustrator file. And I'm using these settings. You can use image compression. You'll just put none for now. Compress vector graphics, sure, 200. I'm using 200 and can show you why later, but we're just going to press export. And while it's going, I'll just show you what I'm talking about. So if I normally exported this as just a PDF, then what I would get is this PDF here, which has these big black lines that run across. And I can actually select, and what you'll see is that it chunks out these rasters into these strips, and at the seam of each strip there's this black line. And that's at a low DPI. If you went to a high DPI setting, you get a whole bunch of them. So really ugly for starters. Also, these can show up when you actually print it too. So it's just really not ideal. But there is a fix. So let's see it finished exporting. So I will open it in Illustrator. Alright, we've opened our map in Illustrator. Here it is, and you can hold Alt and scroll to zoom in and out. So, looks nice, looks good. No obvious seam lines yet, right? So that's good. So what we have to do is a process called flattening. And flattening is actually what printers do when you physically print these things out. And that's how those transparencies get flattened into the raster and avoid those seam lines. So we're going to do that before we export it as a normal PDF. There's a couple of tricks in Illustrator you have to do first. One is just exporting from Arc to Illustrator makes kind of a funny thing. So I have my layers thing here, and I have it a full screen, which is definitely what you should do because there's a lot of layers. And you can go through these drop downs, and what you'll see is that all your data is within this group within a few other groups. So first you gotta go and just find all those groups, and then I'm gonna deselect, and I'm just gonna click on the map and see, yeah, everything's selected, okay. So I'm gonna hold Control and click, and what happens when you do that is it is going to try and select what you're pointing at regardless of what group it's in, but it's going to select the topmost thing. So hold Control and left click, and you can see it selected this boundary around the edge here. So I am going to find it in my list. It'll have this blue square within your group of all your data, and I'm just going to press lock on that. And then I'll try and click again, and now it's highlighting those raster strips that it made, and I can select a single one. So notice when we export it from Arc into Illustrator, it already made the raster strips, but we can't see the seam lines yet. Okay, so scroll down my list and find where that one that I just selected is located. So it's in this group here, and there's probably a bunch of groups in there. If I click on the circle, then it will select this entire box. So what we've just done is we've selected only the data that's in our map box, and that's what we want so that when we flatten it, it doesn't flatten the rest of the stuff. So we'll go to Object and Flatten Transparency. So there's a few different things you can do. Change your resolution. We'll just go on high. Why not? Everything's going to get really pushed down later. And I've messed with a few different settings, and I found that it doesn't really matter what you do. It seems like it works pretty well just doing this process period. So we'll just press OK, flattening, and that's it. There's nothing really noticeable that changes. And if I zoom in, you can see it's pixely. Makes sense because we didn't put it at the highest quality. Yeah, that's it. Now we go to File, and save as, and we will save it as a PDF. Now when you just have it on PDF and press save, it'll prompt you for more information. Yes, we will replace that. Hopefully I didn't have it open already. And one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to compress this to 200 ppi and do JPEG and image quality maximum. Yes, okay. Save PDF. That should do it. So again, I mean, this is what it would have come out as just at 200 dpi from Arc. And if you try to print at a higher DPI, you get a bunch of lines. If you tried to export as just an image, it would come out okay, but it's also a much larger file size. And so this is the output after we did that object flattening. And so yeah, this is our final PDF. And one thing I notice is that you can click and you can find the raster chunks. So those ones are a little weird. There we go. And you can kind of see, I can still see a little gray seam line here on this one in particular. But if I zoom around, I'll just zoom in more on it, it seemed to disappear. So that's more of an aliasing depending on your screen, but it doesn't really show up, and I guess this isn't the best example because I have also these grid lines on here, but it worked. It's not those big ugly black lines, and when you actually physically print this, there won't be any lines at all. So that is how it's done, and you can see here I have a couple files. So I just want to show you the file size. So if you just printed from Arc as an image, it would come out good. This is how it would look, but there's a couple issues. One, it's like 3 times larger in this case, and 2, you can't select any text. It's all just an image, and all your text gets all pixely because it's an image, so it's just a mess. It's not the way to do things. Our final file is just called Hooper Bay, 3 megabytes, so that's perfect. So that's all. I hope that helps you out and works out really well for you.